The Shriving Place, a novella by Brian Patrick Edwards. Chapter 1. Concursus. Tap, tap, tap. Her fingers tap against my shoulders like a pianist would on keys. I often wonder what sort of masterpieces she's performed on them. Tap, 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 tap. They gently patted against my shirt. The little fingers smell of fresh fruit and flowers as the aroma escapes with each additional tap. She's my Sophia, the youngest of my children, but undoubtedly the most beautiful. Praise be to God she took after her mother. The other two, Eli and Richard, favor me. I shouldn't give the impression that they're hideous. They simply do not have eyes like their mothers. They're prone to stinking and obtaining new stains on their Sunday best. Even as we entered the church, I noticed mud on their knees and broken blades of grass stuck to their shoulders. Sophia is quite a mess as well, but at least she has a natural perfume about her. The mess she does make is finding what place to put her food in. The little girl hasn't quite figured out the hands-to-mouth system. She's more hands to nose, hands to cheek, hands to hair and eyes. Mary is good about wiping her clean as she paints her face with food and berry juices. My wife Mary is quite a beauty. The boys would always joke, without lying, that I outkicked my coverage. I, a neck-bearded 20-something at the time, did just that, many years ago. In this very church, perhaps 10, 11 years ago, I first spotted her. I wasn't even Catholic then, but after seeing what such beauty this parish had to offer, you'd think I'd been born with a rosary in my hand. I felt a calling, you could say, but not in a spiritual sort of way. I had no majestic experience, no angels or trumpets, no Holy Ghost revival. Just some kind of realization, I guess. I began to think of my faith in my 20s. Why I believed the way I did. Why I did the things I did. It was my parents, really, and their parents before them for 100 years. But what of my ancestors? I'm of broad European ancestry. I found it sort of shameful to not be Catholic, to go my entire life without having been to one of the incredibly decorated churches. That thought was all it took. I made my mind. I would go to my first Mass. I went alone, with not the slightest clue of what to expect. I mean, I did some basic research first, but that's not much, really. I was alien to all the terms, a foreigner to the incense-infused rituals and the various marble faces that protruded from every corner of the sanctuary. Anyway, there she was, that very first Sunday, veiled, hidden beneath the delicate white and laced cloth that could only dream of hiding her effectively from me. Her dark curls still managed to find themselves framing her face, a soft, lightly freckled face. Her pale porcelain beauty was clothed in a baby blue dress to match her eyes. I was a savage in this place, gawking at this girl, unaware that I was even in the presence of the Lord. The bread of life was broken before me. The people kneeled, yet my eyes were captivated with the dream of her. I followed her every move, did all she did to the best of my abilities. She sat in the pew in front of me, also alone. She held a missal. At the time I thought it was just a strange little Bible with one too many bookmarks. I couldn't hear the priest and his incantations. I couldn't hear anything at all. I couldn't hear anything but an extreme silence that I didn't find possible in a room of 100 people with dozens of babies and elderly. I couldn't hear anything over the soft brush of her dress against the hard wooden pew and kneelers. Those kneelers were atrocious, too. I feel as though they were harsher than the floor itself. These days I kneel on them just for the added penance, but I knew nothing of that then. The praises I would sing if someone had whispered the future with her into my ear that day. It would entail beautiful Sophia, the clones of myself, Richard, Eli, and their dirty pants. Everyone began lining up. Pew by pew, they emptied out into a line that wrapped itself against the sanctuary's furthest walls. I didn't know what it was. I assumed it might have been communion. I followed her, ended up right beside her. We kneeled before an altar on the left side of the church. Mother Mary, massive and made of marble, held her ancient arms out to us. She was decorated with a shiny gold heart and a crown of flowers. I always had issues with statues for some reason before, at least when it came to church. I didn't have problems with Mount Rushmore, though, and people travel from all over the world to see those. Mary had no issue kneeling before the statue, so I was fine to follow suit. The priest came to us one by one. I watched him hold out the bread for my Mary. Corpus Christi, he said, as she opened her mouth and received the Eucharist. I hadn't been hand-fed by anyone since childhood, but I did the same as her and the others. I had no clue that non-Catholics were not allowed to receive Holy Communion. I had not even researched the traditional Latin Mass where I found myself on that Sunday. I had probably only read a little bit about Novus Ordo, the Mass introduced in the 60s. This Mass was the way my ancestors did it, a detail I would be very proud of, once I had learned. It seemed proper to me. I followed after her, made the sign of the cross as she did. The Mass ended. She stood from her pew, collecting her things. She had her purse, her missal, or the weird little Bible, I thought. She had car keys with strange medals attached to them, the saints shimmering as light reflected off of them. When she stood, she looked with purpose, direction, as if she intentionally wanted to avoid eye contact with me. I sprang from my pew, quietly, to follow after her. I didn't want to be a creep, but my attraction to her was far more than magnetic. She stopped abruptly, dipped her fingers into the font of holy water, and proceeded to cross herself. I also mimicked this, excitingly drowning my fingers in the font, soaking my forehead and shirt with the holy water as I crossed myself backward. Backward as the Eastern Catholics do, but I wouldn't know that for a long time. I wanted after her. I wanted to possibly talk. Perhaps God would work a miracle for me. But she was gone. She vanished within the blinding sunlight that flooded the usher-held doors. I would have another chance, I thought. Good women like her always returns to church, like gulls to the shore. As I hold Sophia in the cry room, I find myself in those times, dragged into the depths of my mind by the untouched surroundings of the church. The ceiling seems to almost stretch as far into heaven itself, opening unto us all the beauty that must be hidden behind this thin veil of life. There are angels and saints up there, painted upon the blue and maroon tiles. The saints pierced and cut, with daggers and spears perpetually fixed into their skin. Towards the front of the sanctuary is an enormous mural of Christ with vines leading to him. He holds before him the Eucharist. Underneath him stands a massive high altar, which there aren't very many of these days. After Vatican II, the Church in Rome developed a taste for iconoclasm. Some say to appeal to the Protestants, or because the Church became infested with Marxists, Freemasons, or Jews, who knows. Pick your poison and hate it. That's a reason I like this particular church so much. It's untouched. The building was built 100 years ago. It was built the right way. They don't make them like they used to. Nowadays, you'd be subjected to blank walls. Nowadays, you'd find yourself in a parish seemingly no different from a Southern Baptist church, maybe with 2 or 3 statues hiding somewhere. It's interesting that this church would be found in the heart of Protestant Mecca. That's my name for the Bible Belt. Oh, Birmingham, you lovingly bloody city. Your history is wet with the blood of many, and you smoke from bombings and burned crosses. There's a cathedral downtown. A priest was shot on the front porch there in the 20s. He had done a secret marriage for a Puerto Rican and some white girl. The dad wasn't pleased about that. That cathedral was absolutely gutted after the Second Vatican Council. You'd think they'd leave a martyr's church untouched. Father Coyle was his name. He's not canonized as a saint, but you'd think the local church would treat the belongings of the cathedral as if he was. I don't think they even kept the porch he was shot on the same. Sad. If he woke from the grave today, he'd probably have to ask for directions to his very own cathedral's bathroom. He was one of the good ones, too. I noticed that pattern of recent history. The good ones die. The perverts seem to escape all confinement of reality. A priest married your daughter off to some slightly brown man? It's okay. He's on the porch. Go shoot him. A priest molested your daughter? Oh well. He's gone. He's been relocated far away. I shouldn't speak of such things, but these are my thoughts. My thoughts as they are in the holiest of times at Mass. Christ have mercy on me. I notice I'm holding Sophia too tightly. I get caught up sometimes. Don't think it was Sophia, by the way. Our priest here is a good one. He speaks Latin. It wasn't my daughter that was abused. No, the little girl who was abused didn't have a father around. She was an angelic thing, too. I used to wonder why such horrible things happened to the gentler things. But then I remembered Christ. I look around and see martyrs all over the ceiling. People often ask, if God is real, why do bad things happen? If evil isn't real, then why do horrid things happen to the purest? If there is such evil, such dark abysmal evil engrossed by the brightest objects, then that says something, doesn't it? There's something out there that hates goodness, and God is the source of all good things. Anyway, it's my personal mission to remove evil from this world. I'm a sort of traveling salesman. I sell biomedical devices to different hospitals in many cities. I meet a lot of people. Sometimes I'm the last person they meet.